The wind howled across the barren hills, carrying the taste of dust and whiskey. A wagon wheel groaned to a halt under the dying sun. She stood in its shadow, young, trembling, eyes wide with the kind of fear that made the world spin slower. He climbed down after her, boots hitting the dirt hard. The man reeked of liquor and sweat. Her stepfather. His breath came thick, words slurred with anger. "Get off," he growled. She clutched the sideboard. "Please, I'll work harder, just don't—" His hand struck before she could finish. The sound cracked like a whip in the empty air. She fell to her knees, hair falling like a curtain around her face. He tossed her small satchel after her, the single strap tearing in the dirt. "Not my problem anymore," he spat. The lantern he held swung wild, throwing his face into jagged lines. He climbed back onto the wagon, horses stamping restless under the reins. "Pa!" she cried out, voice shaking. "Don't leave me here!" But he was already turning the wagon, the wheels grinding against gravel, heading back toward the distant glow of town. His laugh, dry and bitter, faded with him. The girl stood alone now, the cold desert wind cutting through her torn dress. Coyotes sang somewhere far off, a lonely chorus under the rising moon. She wrapped her arms around herself, the weight of night pressing down like the lid of a coffin. She started walking. Boots sinking in dust, she followed the road with no promise at its end, each step slower than the last. The stars blinked above, bright and merciless, as if watching a story they'd seen too many times before. She stopped once, staring at the dark line of hills. Maybe there was water there. Maybe someone. The wind carried nothing back. She walked again. The desert stretched on, empty and cruel, the girl's figure swallowed by its vastness. Behind her, the wagon's tracks disappeared under drifting sand, like her name erased from the earth itself. The night was just beginning. The sun rose like a furnace door swinging open, spilling fire across the desert floor. By then, she was barely standing. The girl's boots dragged through pale dust, her shadow shrinking under the merciless light. Her lips were split, her eyes sunken. Every step felt like it might be the one to bury her. She stumbled near a dry creek bed. The earth cracked like broken glass. No water, not even the hum of insects, just silence thick enough to choke on. She fell to her knees, the skin tearing against jagged stone. "Please," she whispered, voice hoarse to no one. "Don't let me die out here." A single vulture circled above, its shadow sliding across the ground like a clock's hand counting down the end. She tried to rise, her legs buckled. The sky spun, white and endless. The edges of the world blurred as if the sun itself wanted to swallow her whole. Memories flickered, her mother's face once soft with lullabies, the smell of rain back when they still had a home, the night her stepfather brought whiskey into the house and never put it down. She crawled forward, fingers digging into the sand as if she could hold the earth still under her. The wind picked up. Sand whipped across her back like 100 small lashes. She covered her face with trembling hands, the grit stinging her eyes until tears and dust became one. At the horizon, heat waves danced like water. For a moment she thought she saw a figure on horseback, a blur in the distance. "Help!" she rasped, voice cracking, but the wind stole the word before it reached the sky. She collapsed onto her side. The world dulled to a hum, as though the desert had been waiting patiently for this moment all along. Her eyes closed. Boots in the distance, slow, heavy, the faint jingle of spurs. A man's shadow fell across her like a door shutting out the sun. He didn't see his face, only felt strong arms lifting her from the dust, wrapping her in a coat that smelled of leather and smoke. The world went black. Rain threatened far off, a thin gray smear over the mountains, but here the sun still burned. The rancher carried her across the saddle like something precious he'd found half buried in the dust. His horse moved steady, hooves thudding over hard ground. She stirred once, a weak sound leaving her throat. "Easy now," he said, voice low, steady as the earth itself. "You're safe." Her eyes fluttered open for a heartbeat, saw a weathered face under the brim of a hat, gray in the beard, lines carved deep by sun and time. Then darkness took her again. The ranch came into view as dusk pulled long shadows across the hills. Fences leaned tired in the wind. A single lantern glowed in the cabin window, waiting like a beacon. He swung down, gathering her in his arms. Boots creaked on the wooden steps as he carried her inside. The cabin smelled of coffee grounds, firewood, and rain-soaked leather. He laid her gently on a bed by the hearth. The fire crackled to life, throwing gold across her pale face. He poured water into a tin cup, holding it to her lips when she stirred again. "Drink slow," he murmured. She obeyed, trembling hands clutching the cup as if it might vanish. "Name's Caleb," he said after a moment, voice rough but kind. "Caleb Ward. This here's my place." Her voice came out a whisper. "Anna." "Anna," he repeated, nodding once like the name deserved respect. "You rest now. Talk later." Outside, the wind shoved at the shutters. Inside, the fire painted the walls in warm, breathing light. She glanced around the small cabin, the rifle over the door, the stack of chopped wood, the single photograph of a woman and child on the mantel, edges curling with age. "Why? Help me?" she asked softly. Caleb shrugged, eyes on the fire. "World's mean enough. Don't need to let it win." Silence settled then, the safe kind. Only the fire spoke, popping softly as the night wrapped itself around the little cabin. For the first time in a long while, Anna closed her eyes without fear. The wind shifted at noon, carrying the sour stink of whiskey and sweat before the man himself even appeared. Caleb felt it before he saw him. Years of ranch life taught him how trouble announced itself. Anna was stacking wood near the porch when the hoofbeats came. She froze, eyes narrowing toward the road. Out of the heat shimmer rode her stepfather, shoulders slouched, a cigarette drooping from his lips. His horse snorted as it stopped at the fence line. "Well, look here," the man called, voice slick with mockery. "Little runaway hidin' with the saint of the valley." Anna stepped back toward the cabin door, but Caleb came out slow, wiping his hands on a rag, eyes cold under the brim of his hat. "She's not yours to take," Caleb said. The stepfather leaned on his saddle horn, grinning wide enough to show missing teeth. "She's mine by law, mine by blood, and mine by choice, whether she likes it or not." Caleb didn't move. "You best ride on." The man spat into the dust. "Or what, old man? You'll shoot me?" Caleb's hand rested near his rifle but never twitched. The wind tugged at his coat like even it knew things were teetering close to breaking. Anna's stepfather's grin faltered just a touch. He looked from Caleb to the cabin, eyes mean as a rusted trap. "She's coming with me," he snapped. "Not today," Caleb said, voice low but carrying across the yard. "Not ever again." Silence. Even the wind seemed to wait. The outlaw laughed once, sharp and hollow. "Fine, I'll be back, and I won't be knockin'." He wheeled his horse around, spitting dust as he kicked it into a gallop, the sound fading toward the hills. Anna stood in the doorway, knuckles white on the frame. "He'll bring trouble," she whispered. Caleb nodded, eyes on the horizon where the man vanished. "Then we'll be ready." The sun slid lower, painting the fence line blood red as the ranch held its breath for the storm it knew was coming. The morning broke over the ranch like a promise. Dust rose in lazy spirals from the corral as Caleb tended the horses, but his eyes never left the horizon. Trouble had a way of coming back, and he could feel it stirring again. Anna stood by the fence, hands clutching the rails, watching the distant hills as if willing them to stay empty. Her voice was quiet, hoarse from the fear she carried. "Do you think he'll really come back?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "He will, but not today. Not while we're ready." A cloud of dust appeared along the trail, not the outlaw this time, but the sheriff. A tall man on a black horse, badge catching the sun. His coat flapped like a banner in the wind, and his eyes scanned the ranch with calm authority. "Caleb Ward?" the sheriff called, dismounting. His boots hit the wooden porch with a hollow thud. "Yes, sir," Caleb answered, stepping forward. "You got a girl here who needs protection?" the sheriff asked, gaze falling on Anna, pale but standing straight. Anna swallowed. I think so, sir. He's my stepfather. He tried to—" Her voice broke. "Enough," the sheriff said gently, stepping closer. "I'll see this ends properly." Inside the cabin, the fire sputtered to life again, shadows dancing across the walls. Anna poured herself a cup of water. Hands trembling, Caleb watched her, silent but steady, knowing the weight of relief didn't come easy. Outside, the sheriff made a plan in low, clipped words, mapping the hills, the roads, and the likely paths of her stepfather. Caleb listened, nodding, ready to follow. "You'll have a place here," the sheriff said finally. "No one will touch her while I'm around." Anna's lips quivered. "Thank you." Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is just the start. But now we have hope." The wind carried the faint echo of the outlaw's laughter from days before, but it no longer held the power to crush. The hills glowed gold with the rising sun, a promise written in light over the ranch. For the first time, Anna allowed herself a deep breath, tasting safety in the dry air, feeling the weight of fear lift, even if only slightly. The sheriff mounted his horse, ready to ride out, a living shield between the girl and the darkness that still lingered. Night fell over the ranch like a thick blanket, swallowing the hills and shadows. The wind carried the scent of sage and distant smoke, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. Anna sat by the fire, knees drawn to her chest. Her hands shook as she held a tin cup of lukewarm coffee, eyes darting to the shadows outside. Caleb stood near the door, rifle ready, muscles coiled like the horse he had ridden in on. Then came the sound. The distant thud of hooves, the scrape of leather, the faint glint of torchlight bouncing on the hills. "They're coming," Caleb murmured. Anna froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Through the darkness, 3 figures emerged, torches in hand, faces twisted with drunken rage. At their lead, her stepfather sneered, teeth catching the firelight. "She's mine," he shouted, voice cracking through the night air. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Not tonight, not ever again. The first torch hit the fence. Sparks flew. Horses whinnied, stamping in panic. Caleb kicked open the door and moved Anna behind overturned barrels. Gunmetal glinted in the firelight as he leveled his rifle. Shots cracked through the night. The outlaw and his gang fired back blindly, torches swinging, smoke mingled with dust and fear curling like fingers around the cabin. Anna pressed herself to the ground, breath shallow, watching sparks dance in the air. She thought she might close her eyes, let it end. But Caleb's hand was steady on her shoulder, grounding her, reminding her she was still alive. The barn creaked dangerously. Flay, Ames licking at the dry wood. Caleb fired again, each shot a heartbeat of defiance. The leader yelled orders, but the chaos was too thick, too wild. Horses bolted, torches tumbled, and the night became a blur of firelight and shouting. Anna whispered a prayer under her breath. "Please." The wind shifted again, carrying the faint sound of hooves that weren't theirs, another force approaching. Hope stirred faintly, fragile but real. Caleb never looked away from the threat. His eyes were steel, his heart steady, holding the line between them and the darkness. The night stretched long, tension thick as the desert air, every shadow a possible end. But for the first time, Anna realized she was not alone. Somewhere beyond the fire and the gunshots, the law was coming. The night was a storm of sparks, smoke, and the bitter smell of gunpowder. Caleb's hands were steady on the rifle, jaw tight, eyes tracking every shadow that moved across the ranch. Anna crouched low behind the barrels, heart hammering in rhythm with the distant thunder of hooves. Then, hooves, closer this time. Not the outlaws, not his gangs, strong, disciplined, controlled. A black silhouette appeared over the ridge, a long coat flapping behind him, badge glinting faintly in the torchlight. "Sheriff's here!" Caleb yelled, voice cutting through the chaos. Anna's stepfather froze mid-step, torch held high. He turned, realizing the tide had shifted. "What? Who?" The sheriff and 2 deputies thundered down the slope on horseback, rifles trained, eyes like steel. Their arrival was a living wall, a force the outlaw had not counted on. "Drop your weapons," the sheriff commanded. His voice rolled across the hills, firm, unyielding. The gang faltered, hesitation cracking their drunken courage. Caleb seized the moment, firing a warning shot that cracked the air. Horses stamped, dust rose, and the outlaw's bravado wavered. Anna clung to the edge of the porch, eyes wide as the final confrontation unfolded. The outlaw barked orders, but the sheriff's presence made him stumble. Every step he took toward the cabin was measured, cautious. The deputies moved in swift arcs, corralling the gang. Caleb flanked the leader, gun steady, waiting for the moment to corner him. With one last defiant sneer, her stepfather made a run for it, then found himself hemmed in by the law. Shackles clanged against his wrists as he cursed and spat, unable to fight the inevitable. Silence fell over the ranch like a heavy blanket. The fire still crackled, tossing shadows across broken fences and trampled dust. Anna exhaled, a long, trembling breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Caleb let his rifle drop, eyes softening as he turned toward her. The sheriff approached, tipping his hat. "Safe now," he said simply. Anna's knees gave way and Caleb caught her, steadying her against the warmth of his coat. Outside, the wind carried away the echoes of chaos, leaving only the quiet hum of the desert night. For the first time, she allowed herself to look at the horizon, the stars bright above, and feel something she hadn't dared to feel in a long while. Hope. The ranch, battered and smoky, stood as a testament to resilience, to the courage of those who refused to yield.